Welcome to SallyTalk. So here I am live, SallyTalk Live. This is Sally. I am a single mom, 4 boys, 23, soon to be 24, 22, 19, and 14. I am also an entrepreneur. I've had my own business for 21 years and supported my family on it for 16. Also, I work at the Boys and Girls Club in the after-school program, and I work with children. I love working with children. So anyway, I started this podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'm doing my best. I just click the button to say go live, and we'll see what happens. I always wanted to, I'm 55 years old, and I've had a lot of experiences and things that have happened to me, and I thought about writing a book, and for the last year I've been thinking about writing a book because 3 years ago, those of you who are listening who know me, I had a tragic life event, and which really kind of cut me at the knees, and it made me rethink about a lot of things about who I am, and I don't know, about a lot of things about just what's going on. And so I decided that I started working on it, and working with an editor, and I was trying to figure out how my arc was and everything else. And it came to me about a month or so ago that maybe I should just do a podcast, because I've always liked to talk. I've always gotten in trouble for talking. I look back on it, and my brothers called me Motor Mouth. My teachers used to say, "Oh, you're so funny. You're such a sweet young girl. You talk way too much." And they put it all in my report cards, and I'd get in trouble. I got in trouble at jobs when I was doing something other than talking. So I went into sales, and I, tried to get into sales so that I could make money for talking. I did have a little bit stint as a stand-up comedian. A lot of people don't know that, but when I was in New York, I worked with a comedy writer, who was working closely with the comedy club Stand Up New York. It had just opened, and they were trying to get people to come uptown to comedy club, because most people used to go down to the Village for comedy, and this was in the late 80s. And so I worked with him, and we did these showcases and stuff, and there was about a team of 10 of us, and we would do these showcases for after work hours, and it worked out perfectly for me because I was a legal assistant, and there was no way that I wanted to go and work a comedy club at 3 a.m. and do my 5-minute bit. So anyway, I did that for 2.5 years, and it was really fun. And then when I moved out to California, I got involved in improv, and I did improv for about 2.5 years. It's where I met the father of my children, my husband Steve, and or ex-husband Steve. And so I really enjoyed that. So, as things progressed in my life, I also, another funny thing is that I found out through Ancestry.com that I am very, 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 very Irish. So I just found that out this Christmas. And so just very Irish and very, and also Scottish. So that might be a little bit where the storytelling comes in, and the wanting to talk and tell long stories. I've had people say to me, "I have a quick question for you. I know I'll get a long answer." So that's me. Anyway, so my way of expressing myself, I think, is by talking. And so I think instead of denying this, I think I'm going to embrace it. And since podcasting has become a big medium, I am going to do it. And so I'm launching into this. It's actually quite an interesting thing. They have these platforms. They make it kind of easy for you to do. It's not simple. It's actually kind of complicated to figure out what you want to do and what music you want and all that other stuff. But as far as like setting it all up, I think now that it's become kind of an accepted medium, it's there. I mean, I could set up a Facebook page that said I was a podcaster. So anyway, it's just been really, really an interesting thing, and I've been working on this for a while. So I've decided to jump in because I can't think about it anymore. I need to just do it. So what I'm going to do, this is my introductory podcast. So I'm just going ahead and I've put, figured out what I was going to say and arranged it and everything. I'm super nervous and I'm super scared. I woke up every day this week saying, what in the world do you think? Who do you think you are wanting to do a podcast? So I'm fighting against that now. So you just bear with me. But anyway, what I want to try and do is do different various themes. So in my thumbnail pictures, you'll see the same picture, and that will be a running series on different things. So one of the things I'd like to do is kind of slice of life stuff, and I'm trying to get back into comedy. So I'd like to, as I'm starting to get my sense of humor back. So I wanted to start working on different comedy routines and things, and so I'm going to do that. So you'll see the thumbnail for that. That'll say Slice of Life, and I'll do some of my comedy bits. And then I also want to talk a little bit about my journey in my Ancestry.com. It's been really, really interesting, and I've found out a lot of stuff, and I hope by listening to that, it might inspire you to research and find out where you came from, because it's really, really fascinating. And when you start peeling away the onion, you really it starts really kind of resonating with you, and you start understanding kind of like who you are. It's been very powerful for me. So I'm going to have that happen. And then also too, which is, I'm going to start a little bit here, talking about, but 3 years ago, I had a tragic life event. My boyfriend, John, took his own life, and it happened on February 16th, 2016. And it really did cut me at the knees. It really was, it was the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me. And my journey to work my way through it, you don't really get over it, which is the one thing you have to accept. But my thought process, all the inspirations I've had, all the signs I've had, all of the things that make me see that I'm going to be able to manage it, is something that I'd like to share too. So I'm going to share that in a series of episodes as well. So I have just a lot of things that I'd like to share, and mostly it's with the hope of resonating with others or helping others, but also too, it helps me work through all this and figure out what the second half of my life is going to be. And with my children older, and my oldest just got a big job, and my third son is moving away, and there's just a lot of change going on in my household. I really am thinking about what it is that I want to do with the rest of my life. So, and so I do want to share also, as a suicide survivor, is what we call ourselves. When I was in my group therapy with other survivors, we were all talking about we should be a little more vocal. It's hard because so much stigma and everything else is attached to it. And if I feel like if I talk about it and I share about it, then we feel like maybe it'll reduce some of the stigma. So a lot of the survivors in my group where we were all talking about that maybe we need to be a little bit more vocal. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just have that be a series. And then if there's anyone that you know that you want to share this with them, maybe they'll find some comfort and help them through it too, because unfortunately there are more suicides than there should be, and especially lately. So so to get started today, because it was overwhelming for me to think about what my topic was going to be. I was just, how do I take all of these things that I'm interested in my business and the comedy and being a parent and the grief management and all of the things that I've been doing. How do I start with one episode, and how do I keep that in 20 minutes, which is what my goal is. I really would like to try and make, when I'm talking to you, I'll just be talking about 20 minutes, because although I've been teased about talking too much, it's a thing. Luckily, improv kind of knocked it out of me to teach me how to stop. So that's what my plan is to not talk too long. So I thought today I'm going to start a little bit with kind of what I was going through this past week, and just launch it that way. So today I want to talk about this last week. I had the anniversaries of John's death, which was the 16th of February, which was 3 years ago, and then my dad's death, which was February 18th, 1 year ago. So it's kind of interesting that two of the most important men in my life passed away, not in the same year, but within the same 2-day calendar days. And so when this year came up, right after Valentine's Day, all of a sudden I realized, I was like, wow, it'll be John's anniversary of John's death and then the anniversary of my father's death. So what I do is I take time. I took some time out and blocked time out for myself, which is something I've learned to do, which I never used to do before, with my passion planner. And I block out the time, and then I just spend the time thinking about them and remembering them and playing music that they liked and that we liked, and thinking about things that we shared together. And so a couple stories came out of that, and then I decided, you know what, that's what I'm going to share. I'm going to share a couple stories. So that's what I've been trying in these last 3 years, to really just kind of try to find the meaning and find my own personal truth, and acknowledging things and realizing that, I miss them, and so I'll just take the time to honor them. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell half a story about John, and then I'm going to tell a story about my dad, and then I'm going to finish up with the second half of the story of John. So John was my boyfriend of 7 years. We started going out longer than that. We would just but we weren't really dating. We were having lunches and stuff like that, and I couldn't really tell really what it was. It seemed very casual. We were just lunch and hike and lunch and hike. And we'd known each other at church, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. And so after we'd been dating a little bit, less than a year, he said something to me. He said, when was our anniversary? And I said, I think it's December 26th. Then he was like, why is it December 26th? And I said, well, the kids went to Phoenix, and you called me up and took me to the movies at night. And for me, that's kind of like when we started seriously dating. And he said, we were dating a lot earlier than that. I have receipts. I can prove that. And I said, well, whatever. If you want to pick a different date, that's fine. But I want it to be, I didn't say I want it, but I said, but in my head, it's the 26th. Well, we picked that. And then it ended up being kind of a funny anniversary, literally the day after of Christmas. So anyway, he was a real larger than life kind of person. And anyone who's listening who knew him knows he was. He loved music, he loved tennis, he loved movies, he loved hiking, he loved sports, he loves bicycling, he liked motorcycles, sailing, you name it. He was really very much Renaissance man, reading all the time. And so we used to go on a lot of trips together. And so when I was in Arbonne, I earned a trip to Maui, so I took him on that trip. And he was funny, he had to plan out, like we went snorkeling and we did all these things, and he jammed it, packed with all sorts of things while we were there. But one of the things with John is that you start shopping. And so he had decided that he needed sandals. And he says, I need new sandals. And I was like, why? Because he always wore sandals all the time at home. He always wore sandals. And I said, why do you need new sandals? And he's, mine are worn out. And I'm thinking, as a single mom with 4 boys, worn out sandals means the thing broke, between your toes, like the thing's broken. So you can't wear them anymore. But not for John. It was like, for some reason, his sandals were worn out. So he says, I need new sandals. You need new sandals. I'm going to get you new sandals. You have to get new sandals. So I was like, okay, fine. So we start shopping in all these little shops in Maui for sandals. And this cool dude comes up to us, and he's helping us. And he's young, and he's like, you need these sandals. These are the best. And we're like, oh, what's so special? And he flipped it over, and there was a bottle opener in the sandal, like underneath the thing, like in the sandal on the bottom. So we were like, why in the world would you want a bottle? He goes, dude, because you're on the beach, and you need to open up a bottle, and you don't have a bottle opener, and you don't even have to carry it with you. It's like in your sandal. So we thought that was just hilarious. So John goes, okay, sold. And then he bought me the pair that were the women's, and the women's didn't have a bottle opener. So for some reason, it's only men who need a bottle opener. Or as a woman, you're just supposed to be with a man who has the sandal with the bottle opener. I don't know how that worked. So anyway, that was a very, very funny little like side note. And we laughed about it, but it was funny because it never used it, or anything like that. So anyway, so hold on to that story. Keep that in your head. So I'm going to move on to my dad. So my dad was also a very larger than life kind of guy. He was big. He was 6'4". He was a big man. He was reddish hair and blonde eyebrows and bright blue eyes. And he was brilliant. And he was a wonderful pianist. He was from a family of musicians, like a real family of musicians, where my great-grandfather was in the Musicians Union, and he knew John Philip Sousa and W.C. Handy, and they're all from St. Louis, and then they moved to Memphis, but they were in the St. Louis Symphony, and just a big musical family, and put on huge productions of Handel's Messiah and all sorts of classical productions. They also played my uncle played in the pit during silent movies. He'd play the piano in the pit, and those people are really amazing musicians to be able to do that. So anyway, my father was a renegade, and he rebelled against his musician family, and he became an engineer. So he was an electrical chemical engineer. He worked for DuPont for 28 years, and then he retired early, and he transferred to and became a consultant for the Saudi Arabian oil company, Aramco. And he lived over there, and just hilarious stories. Like he had his own, like MASH. Like MASH was one of his favorite shows. So he made a still in Saudi Arabia. So he made his own currant cognac or something he was famous for, because it was dry. You weren't supposed to have any alcohol there. And so, of course, my dad had a still, Anyway, so he's just a big, funny, dry, I don't know, just a great guy. And along with just giving me unconditional love, because even though I didn't spend a lot of time with him after my parents' divorce, I just always felt like my father loved me and cared about me, and, would write me beautiful letters. And I kept in touch with him, all the way until he died, as well as I could, because he couldn't hear at the end, and he was 92. But he was just a funny, had a great just sense of humor about him. It wasn't jovial, but it was definitely there, and he kind of like tried to make everything that he did enjoyable, or I don't know, it's hard to explain. So, although there were rough times, anybody who, my family or anything listening, will go, well, come on. And I'll go, well, yeah, he was a human being. But one of the things I remembered about him that came to me this week after I was thinking about him was I'd completely forgotten. But with all this rain in California and everybody panicking, we went through a big puddle over on Lancashire and Camarillo, where they had this huge puddle and all the cars were stalling out. And all of a sudden I had a flashback of my dad. So we lived in New Jersey. We lived on a curve in the road, and it would flood. So in July, we'd have a lot of rainstorms. And my dad would love to sit out on the porch and watch everyone come through and stall out. So my dad knew all about it in car engines. And he would tell me, he said, what happens is the water goes up into the carburetor, and that's what causes the car to stall. If you just sit for a minute, it'll dry, and you can start it back up. But everyone panics, and they start revving the engine and hitting the gas pedal, and they flood the carburetor. So now the carburetor's flooded. It's going to take even longer to dry out. So we would sit on the porch, and we'd watch these people come through. And my dad would sit there with a rubber hammer, and he'd wait until they would go through, and they'd stall. And then he would go over there, and he'd go, and they would be trying, and and he'd go over and go, what's the problem? And they go, I don't know, I went through the water and I can't get my car started. And my dad go, well, let me just check this out. Let me see, maybe I can help. And he'd have his rubber hammer, and he'd open up the hood, and he would pretend to like do stuff, and he'd hit the thing and hit something with the rubber hammer, and they'd go, should I try now? And he'd go, no, I'll be done in a minute. And he'd over there tink, 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 and he'd hit things. And all he was doing was biding time until it dried out. And then he'd go, okay, I think maybe now try. And they'd go, vroom, and they'd start the car. And they go, oh my gosh, what did you do? It's amazing. How did you fix the car with a rubber hammer? And, oh, I don't know. I just tinkered around a little bit. So he would just do things like that. He was just so funny and really such a character. So anyway, so for my launch, I wanted to just welcome everybody. I wanted to thank everybody for being on. Oh, I have to do the second. All right, wait a minute. I forgot the teaser, the ender story. So back to John. So a couple of years, so, we used to go on all sorts of trips. And so later on, we went to Lake Tahoe several times. And we really, really loved Lake Tahoe. So we would go on big hikes and everything. And the thing about John was that you had to make sure that you were prepared, because you had no idea where you were going to end up. So if you got up in the morning, we would stay in this cool cabin in Merkleyville. It's his favorite place. And you had to be ready, because you didn't know, were you going to hike? Were you going to bike ride? Were you going to go to a 5-star restaurant? Were you going to go boating? Were you going to go? You didn't know. So as a woman, he had his sandals and his sneakers, and he was done, or hiking boots. I had hiking boots and then sandals and then this and that. I had to figure out what I was going to wear. So somebody said to me one time, how do you keep up? And I said, I just have a lot, I have a lot of pairs of shoes. I just bring a lot of different pairs of shoes with me. So one day we went in Tahoe, and we were hiking down the Rubicon Trail, which is so beautiful. And we hiked down to the Vikings home, which is this home of this woman, Laura Knight. And she had built this beautiful home, had this Swedish architect build it. But anyway, she's a wealthy woman, and she used to take care of a lot of orphaned youth. She was very involved in youth programs, and she would give scholarships, especially to young girls, for college. And it was kind of remarkable, because it was the turn of the century, and so it was just interesting. She really inspired girls to go to college. So anyway, I'll post about her on the Facebook page, because it was a really interesting thing, and I highly recommend that hike. It was beautiful. But anyway, we got all the way down there. We were hiking around, looking around. And then the plan was we were going to take the trolley back, because it was a long hike. It was a 3.5-hour hike. And so, and it was all down. So we'd take the trolley up. So we thought it was perfect. Well, the trolley stopped running. And that was classic, because John hadn't really thought it through. And so we didn't really call ahead. And so anyway, so that meant we had to hike back the 3.5 hours. And so we, kind of got our water, and then we kind of took a deep breath and resolved ourselves and said, okay, we're going to hike up 3.5 hours. Okay, we should be able to do it before sundown. So let's do it. So we did, and it was beautiful. We took a lot of pictures, and sometimes we walked silently, sometimes we walked together, sometimes we talked. It was beautiful, but it was long. And we were tired. So when we got close to the car, he said, oh, you know what? I have a couple beers in the cooler. And I was like, oh, that'll be great. So finally we got to the car. Now this is 3.5 hours or six or 7 hours of hiking. So we get into the car, and we open up look at the bottles. And of course there's some obscure IPA. So they are not twist off top bottles. All right, you know where this is going. So we're like, oh, wow, we can't open them. So he's fooling with his keys. He's pretending to use his teeth. I'm telling him, don't use your teeth. Are you kidding me? And we're laughing. But we're like, what are we going to do? Well, we could just drive back and whatever. And I all of a sudden I said, do you have those sandals that you bought in Maui? And he goes, I do. And out of his backpack, he pulled out that sandal, and he popped that open. And we had cold beer, and we laughed and laughed and laughed, and we realized that because he had never used it for that ever until that moment, so we realized that that was how life works. We got those sandals specifically for that beer in Tahoe. So that was the way that worked. It was very funny, but that was very much what it was like to be with John. It was a lot of fun, and never a dull moment, that's for sure. All right, so thank you so much for joining me, and I'm going to wrap up. This is about how long I wanted to talk. Please like me on all of my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on everything. It's all SallyTalk. And I want you to share it as soon as I need to get a few episodes going so that I can really share it. But it's going to be every Friday at 10 live. And then people can go back and check out my recorded messages and my recorded episodes. I am going to have several different topics, like I said, and I'm really looking forward to doing this. It's been something I've been thinking about for so long, and it's fine. It's great just to finally get it going and off the ground. So thanks everybody for encouraging me and supporting me. And before I make this into an Oscar speech, I will sign off. Thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon.